Oh, all right, here we are. It is 1:30 PM on Tuesday, July 7th, 2020, and this is the Wausau Waterworks Commission meeting. First order of business on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the June 2nd, 2020 meeting. I'd entertain a motion. Motion by Herbst. Second. Second by Robinson. Is any discussion on the minutes? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving on to our second item, our director's report on utility operations. I'm going to pass it over to our director here, Eric.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, so, I mean, if anyone has any specific questions after reading through, I think there's a couple of things that we'd like to highlight. I think Scott might be able to have a few more details, but well 11 tests that came back, the back T positives again. So, Scott, do you want to kind of give the commission an update on that? See if they have any questions.
Well 11, again, had a bad back T sample. During the process of disinfecting that well, to get some safe samples out of it, we had a 24-inch valve out in front of that well fail, so that crews are working on repairing that now. There's actually being a valve built for that as we speak. Hopefully we'll get it in by the end of the week and we can finish disinfecting that well and get it back online.
Thanks, Scott. I think the other one is the lead service line grant funding that we had. We had about a couple $100,000 left. Just talking with Cheryl and Scott that they've been putting out letters to previously constructed projects, and I think they're back to 07, 08
Correct.
Projects. We're not getting a lot of anybody really interested, and it relates back to cost. It really comes down to what they've told me was the cost that it, because they have to pay for the replacement of the sidewalk and the other concrete that's there as well. So the line replacement itself can be around $2,500 to $3,000, which the commission approved. But then when you add in the sidewalk and stuff, that can be another $1,500 to $2,500, which would be out of their pocket. So the challenge that we're running into right now is, we want to reapply for the new round of grant funding this fall, but it looks a lot better on our books if we've expended the grant funding that we already have, and that's really been the goal. And so this is really just an update for you today, but I think that some consideration needs to be brought in as far as maybe increasing the amount of grant to accommodate some of the. In the past, we were doing projects that we were doing street reconstruction. So, sidewalk replacement and things like that were taken care of under the street reconstruction. And so people were getting a little bit more advantage out of the $3,000, which was the objective. But now if there's a street, everything's there, and they have to remove sidewalk, put it back, and it's going to cost more. And the homeowner has to pick up those additional costs. So, we just, I don't know, Scott, so for the past 10 years, we've sent out notices for the past 10 years where the street projects, and I don't know how many have we had that have actually.
We sent back from, I believe it was 2017 is when the funding first started. So anything 2017 and prior, we've just been working back systematically, giving residents like 2 weeks to at least express interest so we know where we can earmark funds.
Yep.
To date, if you add up the letters, there's been 551 letters, which would equate to about 1.65 million. If everybody took the funding. Of course, that's not the case. Right now we have 2 that have been replaced in those past projects and 1 that's been approved and not been replaced yet.
Yeah.
The issue we're going to start running into now is most of the contractors, or I shouldn't say most of the contractors, some of the contractors that are listed in the program are booked up through September. So to get some more work done prior to the end of the year or even snow coming in or exiting construction season is going to be a challenge.
This mic is not working. The sidewalk replacement, I mean, this has not come up before in our discussions of this. We've had many, many discussions on this issue over the last 2 years. Do you have to remove the sidewalk? Can you use a horizontal drilling technique to get under that without breaking everything up?
There is that technology, you know, that, and I don't know if some of them are using that, there's,
No, that's good. Even if the surface is bored in or drilled in, they still have to have an excavation by the curb stop, which typically lies between the curb and the
Yes.
sidewalk. So typically, it's less expensive to take the sidewalk out than it is to go into the curb and into the street. So there needs to be an excavation there to make the connection on each end. And so the sidewalk typically has to come out.
So if we're sitting on $200,000, and we have 3 people asking to have their lines replaced at $3,500, let's say,
3,000 was the.
yeah, $10,000 out of $200,000. So we've got $190,000 that's not going to be used. Isn't there something we can do about this sidewalk issue where the city picks up that cost, or
Well-
it's part of the loan, or?
yeah, I think what the commission needs to look at is, you know, upping the amount of grant, because the DNR doesn't have a restriction on that. You know,
Okay.
do we want to up that grant to 5,000? Do you want to make it fully grant? You know, depending if it's 5,000 or $6,000 or 3,500, that we'll use the grant funding for that, I guess.
Well, I guess my feeling is I'd rather see us spend the money to get as many of these done as possible, and if that has to include the sidewalk excavation, so be it.
Okay.
Mr. Jean?
In the case of when they do replace, do they replace the sanitary sewer lateral at the same time or not?
The lateral cannot be part of the cost for the water line replacement. The excavation can be a common excavation. Typically, the homeowners are charged for the PVC pipe that is put into the lateral.
But do they typically do it? If they're open cutting it, it makes the most sense in the world, is replace both.
Typically, they do.
Okay.
Those costs are just not eligible to the grant funding.
Oh, I didn't expect that. I have one other quick question. What is the typical cost that you're seeing? If we're paying up to $3,000, they may be paying another $2,000, or what is it?
Typically, the water lines are coming in right around $2,900, $3,000.
Oh, they are.
Ms. Herbst?
Thank you.
Scott, just out of curiosity, is there a specific area that a lot of these letters are going to?
We've just been working back on past street reconstructions. Part of the stipulation in the funding is that it has to result in a full lead line replacement. So we've been concentrating on areas of new construction or past construction where the city portion has been changed already, and then offering the $3,000 for the private side portion. If we're going to open it up citywide, typically for us to do our side is 2 to 3 times more than the private side. So every $3,000 we gave away in grant funding would cost the utility $6,000 to $9,000.
The reason I asked that is I was just curious because a lot of the alder persons do hold meetings, and I was just wondering if there was like a specific area that person could, with their meeting, really reach out to the people and tell them that this is a good thing to take advantage of.
We can try to look back, and it's hard because we've been running it on a first come, first served basis. So potentially, if everybody that has expressed interest in the program does theirs, we would only have approximately $34,000 left out of the $200,000. We're waiting for people to get quotes and make sure we check over the P's and Q's on the program, and then they sign up for the program, make the contract with the contractor, and then we can approve that process. So we would be down to $34,000, but there are some that are dropping out, and right now it's taking almost a month to get quotes from plumbers. So
Mr. Jean?
I've got a question on, can we go into wastewater? You don't, the question is, I see Strand inspected the line on First Street. Did they, by chance, inspect that vault down below, across the tracks in that parking lot? Do we know that?
I don't think so. I think they're up on First,
Just on First itself?
yeah. We're going to be meeting with them on Friday, and I was kind of concerned that maybe we'd miss the storm events, but that doesn't seem to have been a big problem. So I was
Right.
going to talk to them about whether we needed to monitor as long as we'd originally thought, and then maybe we could make a change in course and pick up some other things like that.
I don't think I need to remind staff, but they may need to be reminded Sherman Street has an identical type of pipe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Robinson?
Erica, will we be using that at all to drive the capital plan later? You're giving an update, but will that drive and potentially modify the long-term capital plan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to prioritize where we have issues. So, and I think that once we get the flow monitoring done, we may have to do some further monitoring, to kind of isolate some areas within the city, but it'll help us focus in on where we need to spend our dollars.
So when we get that, it sort of gets into the will we be revising it and sort of developing an implementation plan associated with that I&I plan?
Yeah, they'll be setting up some capital costs for us, like on what they would recommend on priorities. And so obviously we put together a 5-year capital plan, but that can change every year, depending on the data that we get, the information that we get, and issues that we have in the system, whether it's water or sewer. So,
And I would anticipate that there's potential for additional funding sources with the I&I?
I would think that there is. We're always looking for additional funding sources. We're, with a lot of the stimulus money that's coming out with infrastructure, we've been putting project budgets together and submitting those in. And hopefully that there'll be some additional money coming down, from the feds through the states in the next year or so. Yeah.
There is technically no public comment, but are you commenting on the director's report?
No, I happened to be reading it and just wanted to talk briefly about the lead lateral. The front door was locked, so I couldn't get in, and I don't know how you got in. I wanted to just mention that I did receive a letter from Cheryl on Friday and then tried calling, but I think you had the holiday. And I also had left a message with Sharon, and then Jim called me Sunday night. Back 5 years ago, there was some discussion getting away from the child care and businesses and opening up the lead laterals to the rest of the public. Dennis Smith had told me about it, so I've been advocating for 5 years. And I guess I was floored to get a letter saying Elm Street from 2007 is now being considered. I called Jim and said, "Are you punking me?" According to the director's report, it said you're going back to 2018. So I thought, well, this seems odd. But I did receive the information. Jim did confer that this is happening. I have alerted neighbors on next door about information. I understand as of today that there's been hundreds of letters sent around the city for different streets that have been redone and that still have the lead laterals that were not done at the time of construction, or this grant was not available. So I really recommend a list of the different streets as well as informing the rest of the neighbors and alderpersons in that. And then I also learned that Cheryl is leaving. And so I've been told by a few plumbers, get your work in the next 2 weeks. Also from the list of plumbers, I have been alerted, as well as Judith Miller, who is on Kickbush, that a couple of the plumbers I've spoken to said they have been not on the list and are still getting phone calls. So I really would recommend that you go ahead and update that, so not to give the public inaccurate information. But I'm glad that this is coming through. It just seems with the number of lead laterals, over 6,000. And this is a one-time deal. This is a good thing to get out there, and hopefully you will be doing more publicizing. Jim just said to me briefly that something was discussed that I should be aware of, but I don't know. And like I said, the doors were locked, so I couldn't get in any earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Mr. Jean?
I'm not sure where else I could make this comment, but I think the director's report might be appropriate. I'd like to thank our staff for putting on the groundbreaking ceremony. I think it was very well done. I think we ended up getting a little bit of exposure in the media. But I'd also like to expand a little bit on my comments, because I did it off the cuff. I want our staff, I think, needs to be totally, they've been party to these projects right from day one. And when the engineers and the construction gets done and the dust starts to settle, they have to pick it up and make those plants perform. So I'm glad that the staff have been part of that. Maybe they didn't get everything they wanted, but they'll have some sense how to operate those facilities. And because the contractor and our engineers are going to be done, and it's going to be a task, and I know there's going to be training, but it's kind of a neat time when you get to do that and make it all happen. So I just wanted to be sure that those comments are, well, if they're not part of the record, it's not the end of the world, but I think it's very important. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the director's report? Yes, Mr. Force.
On this lead lateral replacement, is it within our powers to increase that from 3,000 to 5,000, which was just kind of mentioned in passing here, so that we can get these projects done and paid for?
I think that is within our, I think this body has previously approved the loan or the grant amount. So we could do that. I don't know if we can do that today. We can do it on the next meeting agenda, though. If that's the will of this body, we can draft something up.
Well, I would like to see it on the agenda, because again, I just think we should get this money spent and get these lead laterals out of the ground. And
Yep.
And the concrete thing, if that's a barrier, then we ought to figure out a way around it.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I think, like, Mayor, if there's a bit of a consensus that I don't think if there's any objections to that, staff can be prepared to do that and kind of move forward, so we're ready to go right away when the actual decision is made. Is that, okay, all right. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the director's report? Any specifics you want to point out other than what we've talked about?
I don't have anything. For me, the financial reports are in there. If you have any questions, Valerie is here. She prepares those for you.
Okay, I'm going to take that as we're okay to move on to item number 3. Discussion and possible action on 2021 through 2025 capital projects.
So at the last meeting, we prepared, like we have in the past, a full spreadsheet of, kind of outlining all of our projects with the request to kind of break that down and just really looking at what we're borrowing versus, our operating budget projects. Then what's being presented to you today is what we would anticipate borrowing on an annual basis, at least based on what we know now. So if anyone has any specific questions about projects or, and I think that you'll see, like, our street reconstruction projects are a big part of our borrowing. We borrow for those when we replace the water and the sewer lines underneath the streets, so. And obviously with the 2 plant projects now beginning construction, we're really focusing in on the distribution and the collection system as far as moving into our capitals, moving into the next few years.
Mr. Jean.
I noticed, first of all, does this have to be approved today?
I guess it could come back in August, you know, it would be nice if we could get some sort of consensus moving forward on approximate. I know Mary Ann's looking at putting a capital books and everything together, so.
Well, I thought it might be easier if I just sat down with Dave and went over some of the items on
Okay.
on the sewer side, but that,
I think we can make adjustments for certain projects,
Okay.
you know? I think it's really the bottom line dollar amount that Mary Ann would like to see, you know, so she can kind of anticipate what the,
I'll just ask one question about it. The Evergreen Lift Station force main, are we going to replace the entire length of that?
We're looking into that. It freezes most every winter, and then we have to go out with our jetter and pump it out like you would a wet well. And we want to look into what it would cost to trench that in a little bit deeper, insulate it better, so we didn't have that problem.
How far does it run? It runs quite a ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, you're familiar with where the lift station is.
Yeah.
And then, it's not 6th, that other street, River Drive, something, that's where the.
It is, I think it
discharge
is
main-
River Drive.
Yeah. So it's a distance.
Would you directional bore it then, or what?
I don't know, we'd have to, other than the concept, we haven't really gone into we haven't gotten estimates or anything.
Do we have any sense where it's freezing? Because I thought it was just freezing as it went down in the ground to get to the depth, so the frost wouldn't be an issue.
We know it's not very deep. We kind of have the idea that we need to redo the whole line. Well, anyway, we could look into that when we look at the engineering and what it would actually cost to put it in.
It's plastic pipe,
Yeah,
and if it freezes, do we repair it?
we haven't had to repair it. There was a repair with break that was right at the lift station we had to repair a couple of years ago, but generally not.
Maybe it is just at the lift station. Still, I'm surprised it doesn't break. I guess that's,
You-
PVC pipe doesn't
I don't,
stand freezing very well.
I was assuming it wasn't PVC. I thought it was HDPE or something.
Oh, maybe it is HPE, but it's pretty small pipe.
It is? It is? Yeah.
It is what?
It is HDPE.
Okay, maybe that's why it isn't, it freezes, but it doesn't break. It'll stretch it.
Sure.
Okay. I noticed quite a few of the other ones, the control panels, is that to make them, the electrical or the control panels, is that to make them so we can tie into the new system at the wastewater plant, or is this just upgrading the panels themselves?
Many of the panels don't meet current code requirements. When you open that initial door, you're into a hot cabinet. That's really not the way things should be done. Some of them still have some issues, like Crocker, for example, has an older system with capacitors. I think also Statine. So some of them need to be updated from a technical standpoint and some from a safety and code standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Force.
When you take out the large amounts for the plant, engineering, design, construction, we have a borrowing amount that trails out for 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, anywhere from 400,000 to something over 2 million that we're planning to borrow in those years. My question is, how does that borrowing compare to what we've been borrowing in the past? In other words, are we looking at borrowing more and more and more, or are we staying pretty level with our indebtedness as we go forward?
yeah, we've been staying pretty level. So typically, like with the state trust fund and stuff on some of these projects, it's really easy to borrow and then pay that back through the utility. I'm not exactly sure where we are right now, Valerie, you know, with some of that, but that's typically where we would look at borrowing those funds from. And so it's, you know, so like when we look at our street projects and we talk to finance and we kind of run through, then the large projects that are long duration, they're gonna be in the ground 50, 70, 80 years. Those are good projects to borrow from. That's the direction that I get from finance. These shorter term projects, that may be more repairs, operation and maintenance, those types of things. That's what we use our operating budget for. So this type of borrowing would remain the same of what we've done in the past, if that's specifically what your question is, yes, yeah. But we would always have this large borrowing that we're doing for the capital plants, and then this would be on top of that, what we've always done in the past, yes. I would like to see us to get to a point where we can do more in cash and less borrowing, but I am following the guidance of finance, on what they feel should be borrowed and what they should pay cash for, so. And I'd be happy to have them here to provide an update maybe at the next meeting, especially if that's where you're gonna finalize the, the capital budget for the year, and they can explain exactly how they're doing that and why.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Robinson?
Yes, do we have a schedule for our bond payments or indebtedness payments? And how do you factor that into the capital project timing? From a budgetary perspective, you got your operational expenses and your revenues and your debt. And the utility is not part of the city's debt per se.
Correct. Yep.
So it's operating differently, so it's not above the levy, but.
Correct.
So do we try to look at windows where we've got, potentially less debt retirement in a year to try to load the capital projects in that year? To get at your point of trying to pay for more from an operational perspective?
Yeah, I can work with finance to have something put together that you can see, maybe a history on where we're at, what that's been looking like, and then maybe after, since we're paying off our short-term revenue bonds and, and how those things look into the future. Yeah, absolutely, I can put that together.
Although this is a great time to borrow because the rates are still low.
Correct, yep, yeah. And I think that's why finance has been recommending, to borrow, because the financing has been so low on some of these projects, especially through the state trust fund and stuff.
So when you do that projection on the cash flow and the indebtedness, can you also do a historic end of the year balance and fund balance is where we are? Because I think this might be a good time for us to boost that fund balance a little bit for emergencies in the future, so.
Yeah, we can work with Ellers on that too, because that's what their projections were with the rate case and stuff. That's where they were focusing to, not only just now, but how do we get to a point to where we're more financially stable with the utility? So, kind of to Jim's point, we can take a look at, how the borrowing is, give you some more details and stuff on that, Jim, and then kind of where we'll be. And then from your point, we can look at a historical and put some information together for you, and then have you review that before the next meeting, and then we can kind of walk through that and hash that out with, have Mary Ann here and stuff, so.
And I'd be particularly interested in Mary Ann's thoughts on that, the fund balance and where we're
Yep.
going from
Yep.
a financial
Okay.
security perspective.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion? Are you ready to move on to item number 4?
Well,
Oh.
do you want a motion to?
Oh, yes.
I would move that we approve the proposed capital plan for both the water and wastewater.
I have a motion by Robinson. Do I have a second? Second by Herbst. Is there any further discussion on this? Yeah, Mr. Jean.
Since they're not all going to happen this year, we'd continue to update it, so I'd be fine with that, yes.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, all of those in favor of approving the 2021 to 2025 capital projects can say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 4, discussion and possible action on a Wausau Waterworks water saving program. I believe, are you taking lead, or are you Mr. Force?
Sorry.
Would you like to?
Sure.
Would you like to present? Perfect.
Sure. Scott Boers and I met and came up with this 1 or 1.5 page summary where we tried to identify the elements of the program and some of the needs that we have and questions we have about resources. Steve Miller is also interested in working on this, although he was not able to attend the last meeting. I think we have enough feeling of approval from this body that this is something we should go forward with. The questions we have, of course, is how are we going to do this? And that's sort of outlined on that sheet that I have there. Questions regarding what are we going to call it? Do we have any graphic capability within the city staff to develop some kind of a logo or type style that would identify this program? And then are there others within the municipal structure, either staff or committees or councils or groups that would be interested in working with Scott and me and anyone else from this group who would like to be involved, working with us to make this happen? So those are the basic questions that we're kind of bringing you today. I apologize for the looseness of the discussion, but this is basically a statement of where we are on this project. I'm happy to respond to questions, happy to take suggestions.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson?
Jim, just a thought is that I think whatever we do, we need to do multilingual, given the number of different ethnic backgrounds in the community, particularly Hmong and
That's a very good suggestion, John. We hadn't thought of that, but that's certainly right up the alley. Okay. I don't know if there are any other thoughts that this group has about this. I don't know that any action is required. I think, again, you've sort of given us the nod to proceed with this. But these are some of the questions we have. Any thoughts?
I just think, as we move through these, Scott, anything that you need on some of these action items, like, once you determine a name with the group, we'd be happy to put something together, some options for the logo, the name, how that goes together, and I guess that would kind of be the start, and so,
Okay.
whatever that timing is, Jim, and
Okay.
if you need anything from me, let me know.
All right.
So,
Well, we can certainly just move ahead on our own. I guess our thought was if we had some kind of input from the public or from the ratepayers, that might generate some interest in the program. That may be an
Sure.
unnecessary step, or it may be something we want to do.
Sure. I guess my own thoughts, the Marathon County Solid Waste Department does kind of a similar program. They did some marketing materials. They actually hired a local firm to kind of just deal with that for them. And it's kind of humorous, kind of fun. It might be something we could look into. We could ask Melissa, how much did this actually cost you? Because then you can focus on getting the message out to more people. And
Okay, that might be a good first step.
sure, I can
Again,
ask.
I don't know anything about the budget or expenditures,
Yep.
whether there's some money somewhere that could be used for this. I have no idea.
Sure. I can look at what she has, what they
Great.
used for a budget. So maybe I'll copy you in if that's cool.
Great,
Good.
that would be good. And Scott and I and Steve will continue to work on the message part of this, I think, and maybe bring something much more specific back to you for the August meeting. John, your suggestion on rain barrels is really great. That will take some doing to get one in place. And I don't know that we have enough time left in this summer season to do it, but certainly we could get something that might be ready for the 2021 season.
I can try to check with the folks in Superior who ran one and see what their parameters were in design.
Well, a number of communities in Wisconsin do that, including Milwaukee. So, yes, please do if you have any information on that.
Is there any other discussion?
Okay?
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Thanks for working on this. All right, item number 5, discussion and possible action on approving the wastewater plant operations supervisor job classification.
So this is part of the organizational chart that was approved last year, was creating and classifying a wastewater plant operations supervisor versus just having a senior plant mechanic. We needed somebody that was a little bit more administerial would have responsibility for supervision of having direct reports, as currently everything is being supervised by the superintendent. So we wanted to break up some of that supervisory responsibility, because this individual in this position, you know, has day-to-day contact and does day-to-day tasks for the plant mechanics. So Tony's here from HR. She helped write it. The position description was written. It was classified by our outside consultant. And this is coming before you for approval of the classification and the salary grade of 17.
Mr. Jean?
I'm just glancing through the job description, and for some reason, I must have read it someplace that it determines the amount of wasting of sludge. Is that correct? But I don't know if it's in here. I'm sure that it is, but I can't find it. But that there'd have to be coordination, and it should be so stated with the lab technician for the data and et cetera. So, but I didn't see what I was looking for, but I'll read through it later, but I won't be able to comment on it further.
Yeah, and that decision's kind of a consensus sometimes, but certainly the lab technicians involved in that has the test results. And we've been working with Donahue with a spreadsheet and trying to optimize that when we've had trouble this summer, so.
Mr. Robinson?
A question relative to the FLASA status. It's not exempt, is there, but it's supervisory?
Wausau HR Director Tony Vanderboom, to the mic.
That's actually a typo. It is exempt position.
Mr. Force?
I'm not familiar, maybe some of you are, with the salary grades at both of our facilities. A grade 17 with that salary of approximately 47 to 66,000. Where does that rank among our other salary levels? Do we have lots of 17s? Do we have 18s, 19s?
I see Tony nodding her head.
I'm pulling up the chart for you to take a look at. But yes, we have a number of 17. 17 represents right about the lowest level of supervisory employee that we have. Anything below 17 is usually an hourly employee. And we do have 18s, 19s. I'm trying to remember all your questions, but we do have positions above that as well.
So our system, Jim, it's a little confusing. The lower the number, the higher the salary. Yeah, you know, so it's kind of, yeah,
Oh, no.
yeah.
At one point it was that way, and then it got flipped around, and we've lived that way for a while.
All right, to answer my question, where does 17 fit in the salary schedule?
The 17 is the just about the lowest category that we have for a supervisory position. So the people who are paid higher than that are supervisors and managers, and below that are typically hourly employees.
Are you asking how many levels there are?
I'd like to know a little bit more about where the 17 fits in the scheme of things.
I mean, I guess I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for. We've got about 22 salary levels that range in payments to our directors all the way down to our...
I'll just be very frank. Looking at that salary, I wonder, I'm looking at the duties that this person is expected to accomplish. Is that the right range? Is it too low?
Sure. We secured the outside vendor that created our salary scale, and we sent them a copy of the job description, and they used the decision band method. So basically, they weigh each position based on the responsibilities, particularly related to the types of decisions that they have to make. And based on the independence and the severity of those decisions, helped categorize where they should fall. So these, all of the new supervisor positions are falling right about at salary grade 17. The only supervisors in the utility that are higher would be the DPW supervisors are one salary grade higher. And our recent collection system supervisor, I believe was the title, right, Dave? That one I always get wrong. That one was classified one salary grade higher.
Do you have any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any other, Mr. Robinson?
I would move that do we need to approve the
Yep.
job classification?
Yep.
I would move, make that.
All right, I have a motion by Robinson. Do I have a second? I have a second by Jean. Any further discussion on this? All right, all those in favor of approving this, I want to make sure I have it right, approving the wastewater plant operations supervisor job classification, can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And that is it. The last item on our agenda is adjourn, so we're adjourned. Thank you.